Hey guys, welcome to another segment of book reviews here on the channel. Last time we looked at the Star Wars novelization for The Phantom Menace, and in that review I think I stated that I was going to continue on with Attack of the Clones. However, I've decided to go back to the very beginning to look at the very first Star Wars novel, Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. Now, why exactly have I done this? My best friend and I have decided to look at the Star Wars Legends material, or EU as it's also known, because canon material right now is just so daunting. There's so much out there, and it looks like it will never end because it probably never will end because it's Star Wars and it's the new canon. However, I have really enjoyed what I've read of canon so far, but I wanted to go back to the very beginning and look at how the EU once looked, and mostly because I'm not very familiar with the Star Wars Legends material because I didn't grow up reading this material. I gawked at the books when I was little, but never actually sat down and read them. And I think now is the perfect time to look at them since they are, legends and they have an expiration date, so I know where it begins and ends. And I thought the best way to look at this would be to start from the very beginning with the first novelization, Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. So anyway, let's get started. Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker, or the Episode 4 novelization, was based off of the screenplay by George Lucas, and he is credited as writing the novel, but he in fact didn't actually write it. It was actually written by Alan Dean Foster, who was ghostwriting for this novelization, and Alan Dean Foster has written several Star Wars novels throughout the years. I've read his Force Awakens novelization, which I really enjoyed, and I was interested in seeing how this book compared to other novelizations that I've read, like The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and most recently, of course, The Phantom Menace, and I didn't really know what to expect. But after reading it, I really enjoyed this novelization, and it's not without its flaws. It has quite a bit of them that I think hold it back from being a great novelization and a great representation of the movie. But I still think it is worth checking out for any Star Wars fan nonetheless. Now, basically, I'm not going to go into the plot because it is the plot of the movie that everybody knows, so I'm not going into that, but I can say that there are many differences with this novelization from the movie, even though it tells the exact same story. It's much more like an extended cut of the original film. If you guys are watching this, you guys might know that originally Star Wars was probably about a 3-hour movie, and it has a lot of the extended and deleted scenes from the movie in this novelization, such as Luke and Biggs in Beggar's Canyon and Anchorhead, and a lot of things like that. Some little tidbits here and there. There's some differences in dialogue, character names, and also the vernacular, and everything is just a little bit different. And what's really interesting is that this book is really the first introduction to the Star Wars universe that we've ever gotten, because this actually came out in 1976, a year before Star Wars would hit theaters, and I find that extremely interesting. So this book has to introduce us to the world of Star Wars, tell its own story, and, be a novelization of the movie it's based on, and I think it does a good job for the most part. Starting off with the beginning of the book, though, it really shows that George Lucas changed a lot of his ideas throughout the making of the original trilogy, because if you read the prologue to this book, you will see that the Empire was created through the bureaucrats that were trying to exploit the Republic. We see that Emperor Palpatine, he made himself emperor and was basically a figurehead as the bureaucrats really controlled the empire. And I think that's something interesting, that the emperor was not actually wholly evil. And I think that's really cool and something interesting that, of course, they just completely didn't deal with, but still interesting nonetheless. I love the stuff with Luke and his friends in Anchorhead, his relationship with Biggs. We see his hopes and dreams very early on, and the novelization does a great job of taking things very slowly, and we get to delve more into the character of Luke, more so than we do in the movie, and I think I really liked that. However, it comes at the cost of the pacing of the novel. This book can be extremely slow. The first half of this novel, they have not even left Tatooine yet, and then the book races through the rest of the story at breakneck speed, and that's something I've noticed with Alan Dean Foster's writing, because he does the exact same thing in the Force Awakens novelization, where he really takes his time with the first half of the movie and then just speeds through the rest of it. However, I can say that the book does get better and better as it goes along. It gets more breakneck paced. It's just a lot of fun. It's just wonderful being introduced to these characters. Also, it's really interesting how they change little things here and there throughout the book, from dialogue to just wording in general, such as R2-D2 and C-3PO are not really called droids in this novelization. Now, they do refer to them as droids every now and then, but the novel usually just calls them robots. And I thought that was really kind of funny that the language of Star Wars hadn't really been built yet. And I thought that was really interesting. And also, Alan Dean Foster will describe things in the book by describing things that we know in our own world, such as dogs. Yes, dogs exist in the Star Wars universe, and I thought that was really funny. But the dialogue is really interesting because they do some tweaks here and there. There's some differences, some big differences even. Some lines that, are so iconic in the original Star Wars film are not even present in this book, or at least there's variations of it. And it makes for a clunky experience. Sometimes I really enjoy the dialogue, however, sometimes it's just really goofy and doesn't roll off the tongue as well as it does in the movie when the actors are giving these fantastic performances. But it still is interesting nonetheless. I also really like how Luke deals with the death of Biggs in the novelization. In the special edition of the movie, we really don't get Luke's reaction to Biggs dying. I mean, we see a cut of him, breathing heavily, but really in this book, it gives time for that to resonate with Luke. He cries, he mourns for him, and I thought that was a really good moment that is actually missing from the movie, and I thought it was really cool. But yeah, overall, this novelization is a lot of fun. It's got some problems with it, with dialogue, with some weird wording, some pacing issues, but there's stuff that I really enjoy in this novelization. Some added scenes with Luke and Biggs. I love the prologue at the beginning with the Emperor and how the Empire was formed. However, at the end of the day, it is still just A New Hope, but it's just a little, I'm not going to say worse, but it's just not as good as the movie that we would eventually get. But it is still worth reading if you are a Star Wars fan. If you want to get into the EU and start from the very beginning, I think Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker is the place to go. I think it is a very entertaining novel, has some problems, but still something I can sit down and enjoy, and also it's a very quick read. I'm going to give Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker a 7 out of 10. Well, guys, I want to thank you for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed this and look forward to more book reviews coming soon, especially from the world of Star Wars, since that's my kick right now. I'm planning on doing a lot of the books. I don't know if I'm going to go into the comics just yet, But look forward to my next review for the book Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which will be very interesting because that is not beloved at all. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.